Hey everyone, I've got some duels to share with you today. There's a guy by the name of Mikkoto that I met during St. Riot's stream, and he and I have had a few fights here and there, and he's a very, very good player, and I thought, well, it'd be fun to have some duels with him. It's been a long time since I've really dueled. I've been much more invasion focused lately, and he's got a new pyro build that he wanted to test out, so I thought he and I could tow it. Both of us are around soul level 90. I think my character is actually soul level 92. And we start off, and Mikoto's obviously got an ultra great. I think that's a Stora, and I've got my great sword. And that is the kind of fight that I'm very, very comfortable with. Or straight sword versus straight sword. Now he's got Black Flame among other pyros and Black Serpent, but Black Flame is really the one that I know I need to be super careful of. And I'm not accustomed to fighting good pyros. I've fought pyros before, but typically I encounter them just spamming Chaos Bed Vestiges and invasions, not actually dueling. So this time Mikkoto switches it up in favor of a greatsword, in favor of the Onyx Blade. Greatsword versus greatsword is probably where I am most comfortable from a dueling perspective, although the Onyx Blade occasionally gives me trouble with spacing just because it's got a longer range than most do, but still I would say of just about any matchup, this is really where I'm most comfortable. And fortunately, when my message got raided, neither of us had done any damage to one another yet. So greatsword is just spacing, spacing, and more spacing, and trying to counter hit your opponent and force them to make a spacing mistake. It's really dancing around the edge of where they can hit you and baiting them into attacking just out of range so that you can counter attack, and then mixing in the R2s. I'm not sure. I've whiffed a couple of backstabs in these fights that were a little odd. In there I catch him in a rare panic roll and I'm able to punish it. So the fights start off pretty well in my favor, but things quickly turn in the other direction here. Mikkoto, he's got obviously a spear. I think that's the Saint's Bident, but I'm not entirely sure. And pretty quickly here I realize that I've got a real problem, which is a spear user wants you at range so that they can poke you outside of your ability to hit them. So typically when I face a spear, my strategy is to get right on their nuts and get right in their face and take away their reach, take away their advantage. Unfortunately, he's got Black Flame in his other hand, which is in some ways even scarier than the spear. So I'm kind of searching for what to do here. I'm not really sure. I know at this point that he's got the matchup advantage on me, and I'm just trying to kind of feel my way through what the right way is to come in and attack him. Most players, even if the matchup advantage runs against you, and that was a great bait there. Even if the matchup advantage is not in your favor, you can sort of explore and find holes in there. I make an enormous mistake keeping my guard up. I had forgotten just what damage to your guard Black Flame will do. And so I take my first of what are going to be many losses here. The other thing I had some trouble with was with Black Serpent. Sometimes there's a couple times where it hits me where I feel like I'm way out of range of it. And at this point now, I know that he's got an advantage on me. I know the matchup is not in my favor. And actually, I think by this point, I had actually equipped the spear as my second weapon. But I'm being a little bit bullheaded about it because I want to see if I can actually beat him with this matchup. But he's just doing a really good job of punishing me when I get in close. And anytime he gets me with Black Flame, the trade is going to be in his favor. So I can't get in close because I'll trade with Black Flame, and I can't be at a distance because he's going to hit me either with the spear or he's going to hit me with some sort of projectile. So that was the second loss in a row, and at this point I'm starting to get a little frustrated, not because I'm losing per se, but because I really have no idea on what to do here to try to compensate. So I bring out the I bring out the crossbow, hoping that I can at least punish him when he tries to throw the Black Serpents out. But Mikoto's doing a really good job of mixing up his attacks. He's mixing in running attacks with running up as if to do a running attack, but then stopping and doing just a regular R1. He's doing R2s, and he's varying the amount of charge that he's putting on the R2s. And there I gambled and thought that he would go for the R1 to punish me. I thought for sure I'd get the parry, and I whiff it, and then I end up losing like a third of my health as a result. And here at the end, the wheels just kind of come off, and he just is really, really giving me a rough time. And there, I don't know how I got caught by Black Serpent. I don't know if it's got just a really big hitbox, or if it was lag, or if I'm doing something wrong. I just wasn't sure. So at this point, I think my frustration had kind of reached a peak. Actually, it was funny because, and this time I decided to finally switch over to the spear that I had equipped like 3 fights earlier. Mikkoto and I had been talking about having these duels, and I had asked him to record the duels from his perspective, and I said, you know, I'd kind of do the same thing from mine, and it would be sort of interesting to watch, because sometimes when you have a duel, you see weaknesses in other people's games when you fight them, but you may have the same weaknesses and they're not apparent to you from your perspective. So my hope is that when I watch these fights from his perspective and I see myself as if I were my own opponent, that there will be weaknesses in my game that will be more apparent to me. And here he's just chopping me up with surgical efficiency. I was hoping there might be some weaknesses in my game, and there's me getting caught by the Black Serpent again. And there's one of my first rolling attacks, one of I think 2 in all these duels, and you learn early on, don't use rolling attacks because they get you parried. But I think unfortunately I don't use them nearly enough, and I need to work to get those in my game more often. And so Mikkoto and I throughout all this were kind of talking about our matchups and how the games were going. And I confess to you, I really didn't have a good response for his build at this point. And he was actually the one that suggested using a curved greatsword. And there I caught him rolling in expectation of my attack earlier, so I held that running attack just a little bit longer to see if I could bait the roll out and then catch him when he came out, and I was able to do that. When you run at somebody with one of these curved greatswords, it creates a lot of pressure. Those running attacks come out very, very quickly. And that was just what the doctor ordered. That was exactly what I needed to try to combat his build. But I think, so as I was mentioning earlier, Mikoto's recording the fights from his perspective. I think he's going to upload them to his channel. Initially, I was going to upload this in an unlisted format, but talking to Mikkoto more about it, he thought that it would be valuable to put up on the channel, and I started thinking more about it, and then I was going to put it up without commentary, and I was really proud of that backstab there. But then I started thinking even more about it, and I realized, well, there might be some people that get value out of this. I'm just really not sure. So please do let me know in the comments, do you see any value in these kinds of duels or not? And obviously I'll try to adjust the content accordingly. I used to invade a lot, then I got away from invading, and that was a great charge right there. That was perfect. Very, very well executed. In fact, at the end of this fight, I started looking for it in this fight, getting ready to switch over to my shield so that I could parry him, but I'm sure he suspected that, and he showed a lot of discipline in not using that charge again. I was looking for charge this entire fight. And there's the second rolling attack. I get really lucky there because we swing at the same time, and I just happened to start my swing a little bit earlier than he did. And the same exact thing there. Started swinging at the same time, and I ended up coming out ahead both times just because I started swinging first, not because of any sort of hyper armor advantage or anything like that. So I was really pleased to have finally picked up a couple wins, but I thought, let me go back to the spear and see if I can face him sort of straight up spear on spear. And now, because I don't have the parry shield in my other hand, I can see the Mikoto's being quite a bit more aggressive with the running R1s. That was actually the third rolling attack, and that one did not connect. But I really feel that you need rolling attacks because they're oftentimes one of the only things that can keep players honest, because otherwise when you roll, they don't have to worry about a quick rolling attack coming out of your roll, and they can delay it. On the other hand, if you do enough rolling attacks and they have to respect that, you can't usually get out of the way on reaction of rolling attacks, so you end up having to roll when the other person rolls, which can then open you up to getting roll caught. And these fights are almost entirely in the order in which they occurred. There's a few exceptions. I think that fight with the spear, when I was just using the Dragon Slayer spear, and I really need to roll twice to get out of the way of that attack. But that was one of the last fights. In fact, it may have been the very last fight. And here I really don't have any intention of trying to parry him. I'm just trying to put the thought in his head. And I don't know if he realizes that or not. And that hurt. And I really thought he was going to catch me with that black serp, and I couldn't believe he didn't. And here with the weapon art, you usually don't want to go for the rest of the weapon art unless you get a hit confirm on the first part, but I suspected he knew I would know that and would stop when I didn't hit him with the first part of the weapon art and come running in and attack me. And so I decided to take a chance and go follow through with the weapon art, and that's exactly what happened. I really need to remember to roll twice for those. Part of the problem is that as you get better at this game, you learn when you need to roll twice and when you don't, and I'm kind of using the fact that I know to only roll once, and it's really getting me punished. Yeah, he just chews me up with this. This fight actually occurred before the previous one, and I made the necessary adjustments for the other fight and ended up winning. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that all. Thanks a lot for checking in.